Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Beis, Daf 2 of Masechta Moed Katan. I hope. I didn't look at the calendar. Are we learning Moed Katan? Oh, I sure hope we are. Ooh, that would be a headache. Big headache. Pretty sure we're learning Moed Katan now. Alright, we're just gonna go with that. Alright, we're learning Moed Katan, okay? So, we're gonna learn Daf Beis of Moed Katan. Yeah, we better be learning Moed Katan. That's what I prepared. Friends, whether you like it or not, we're learning Moed Katan. Well, who could tell me what Moed Katan talks about? Talks about Chol HaMoed, so that's interesting. And it also talks about, there's sugyas about Avelos, about mourning in Masechta Moed Katan. So for example, on Tisha B'Av, there's a few Torah topics you could study on Tisha B'Av, one of them being the mourning sections of Moed Katan. One time I tried learning it on Tisha B'Av. That's what I did, staying at my cousin's house. On Tisha B'Av. And okay, so some things that are going to come up in today's daf, that is specifically in the context of Chol HaMoed. So on Chol HaMoed, not like everything is permissible, right? There are certain things that are permissible, such as a davar ha'ovid, right? Something that if you don't tend to it, it is going to get destroyed. But as we're going to see, even in that case, possibly if there's tircha yisera, right? Even if it's something that if you don't tend to it, it can get ruined. But if it's going to be too much effort, then maybe that would be a problem. Also, tzorkei rabim, right? If it's a public utility, if it's something that's to the benefit of the public, so that is okay. So there's certain situations, certain things certain malachis that you're allowed to do on Chol HaMoed. With that introduction, let's get started. So that's where we're gonna kind of jump into over here on Beis Amud Aleph with the Mishnah Mashkin Beis Hashlochen b'Moed Uva Shvius. So you can irrigate a Beis Hashlochen on the Moed and on Shvius. Weiter. Just kidding. Okay, so what's a Beis Hashlochen? A Beis Hashlochen is a field on a mountain. What's the significance of the field on the mountain? I think it's just an example of a field that requires irrigation, right? As opposed to a Beis HaBaal, right, which is a field that's like in a valley where, you don't need to irrigate it because all the water from the mountain kind of runs off into the valley and there's plenty of irrigation already in the valley. So you don't need to, manually irrigate it in order to ensure that the whatever plant is planted there succeeds. But on a mountain where the rain kind of drips down the mountain and it doesn't absorb so stark into the ground, so you actually have to irrigate it. So that's what a Beis Hashlochen is. A Beis Hashlochen is a field that requires you to irrigate it. Okay? So Mashkin Beis Hashlochen b'Moed. So, excuse me, guess apparently I'm still shtickle under the weather. So you can irrigate a Beis Hashlochen, a field that requires irrigation, on Chol HaMoed, because if you don't irrigate it, it's going to, whatever's planted there is going to die. You have to irrigate it. So therefore it's allowed. Uva Shvius, and you're also allowed to do it on Shemitah. We're going to see at the end of the daf, we're going to ask, why are you allowed to do that on Shemitah? Bein mimayon sheyotzo batchila, bein mimayon shelo yotzo batchila. Now, you're allowed to irrigate a field whether from a spring that is a new spring, that is still kind of trying to find its way, its path isn't established yet, and maybe it can kind of you'll have to fix it or something like that, or whether it's an old established spring. Either way, you're allowed to irrigate your Beis Hashlochen on Chol HaMoed. Aval ein mashkin lo mimei geshamim, but you're not allowed to use, if you have a puddle of rainwater, you cannot use that. V'lo mimei akilon, and not water from a well, right? The assumption being that that would be tircha yisera, right? We're going to have to get into it a little bit later exactly what's going on, but even in a situation where there's a davar shel hefsed, right, a davar ha'oved, such as this field, that if you don't irrigate it, then it's not going to have any water. nonetheless, extra, right, more exertion than is necessary is not allowed. We don't make like these, like irrigation ditches like around grapevines. Maybe my friend Donnie Friedenberg could tell me about that. Or how about this, Josh Fleet? If you're still with us, Josh Fleet, maybe you could tell us what these ugios legefanim are. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, says Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, in osen esa'amo batchila b'moed, you cannot make an irrigation canal from scratch on Chol HaMoed, uva shvius, or on Shemitah. But the rabbis say osin esa'amo batchila b'shvius. You are allowed to make an irrigation canal from scratch on Shemitah. Alright, u'misaknin es hamukulkelas b'moed, and you'd be allowed to fix a broken irrigation canal on Chol HaMoed. So you cannot create a new one, but you can fix an existing one. You're allowed to fix damaged cisterns in the public domain, and you can clear them out. And you can fix up the paths and the streets, and the mikvahs, and you can do all public utilities, right? All things that are needed for the public good, you could do on Chol HaMoed. And you can what's it called? A sign, indicate, I can't remember what the word is, graves, right, kind of to make an indication that there is a grave there. And they also go out to tell everybody, to hey, don't have any kilayim on your field. You could do that on Chol HaMoed as well. Alright, so those are all these kinds of things that you could do on Chol HaMoed. Friends, it's really fun stuff. Says the Gemara, Hashta yesh lomer. In fact, the Gemara wants to know, Mimayin sheyotzu batchilo do'osili in pule mashkin. The Gemara wants to know, one second, if the Mishnah says that a beis hashlochin, this field that requires irrigation, as opposed to a beis habal, which does not require irrigation. So once the Mishnah says that this field that requires irrigation, you're allowed to irrigate it from a new stream, the osilin pule, where there's a risk that the walls can kind of cave in and fall in, and you'll make a mess and you'll have to fix it, and there'll be extra tircha, and there'll be extra, right there, and there could potentially be extra exertion, and nonetheless we say it's okay, you can irrigate the field with this new stream. Mashki mimayon shelo yotzu batchila delo osilin pule miboya. The fact that you would be allowed to irrigate the field with an already established stream where there's really nothing to be concerned about. There's no concern that the walls are going to cave in. It's already established. There is no concern about extra exertion. So certainly, if in the case of a new stream, you're allowed to use it for irrigation of a beis hashlochin, even though there's a potential for extra exertion if the walls cave in, and you're allowed to use that stream, so then memele, you should be allowed to use an already established stream where such a concern is irrelevant. So why does the Mishnah even need to waste its breath? So Amri, they say, itztrich. The Mishnah is not wasting its breath. It needed to tell us also an established stream, because itana mayon sheyotzu batchila, because if the Mishnah would have only taught about a new spring and say that a new stream, and that is allowed by a beis hashlochin, so havamina, you know what I would have said? Hocha hu de beis hashlochin in beis haba'al lo. I would say, okay, when it comes to a new stream, so by a beis hashlochin you're allowed to use it because even though there is a potential that the wall could cave in and it'll be extra exertion, nonetheless, you are allowed to use it because it's a Beis HaShlochin and it needs irrigation, so it's allowed. Whereas by Beis HaBa'al, a field in a valley that it already has water and doesn't need the irrigation, so then you would not be allowed to use a new stream because there's a potential for extra exertion. Because the walls might cave in. But what about an already established stream? Where there's no concern that the walls might fall in because it's already established. I might think that, okay, well, if it's talking about an established stream where there's no concern that it's going to cave in and that there's going to be extra exertion, I might think to say that you'd be allowed to irrigate even a Beis HaBa'al, even a field in a valley. I might think that you would be able to irrigate from an established stream. So Kamash Malon, therefore what the Mishnah is teaching that no. Both when it talks about a new stream and when it talks about an already established stream, Beis HaShlochin in. When it comes to a Beis HaShlochin, a field that needs irrigation, so you're allowed to irrigate it from both a new stream and an old stream, as opposed to Beis HaBa'al lo. Though both of those examples, however, in the context of a Beis HaBa'al, a field in a valley, you would not be allowed to irrigate that field in the valley that does not require irrigation. You cannot irrigate it from neither a new stream nor an old stream. So yes, Einochinami. When it comes to the Beis HaShlochin, if we're saying that you're allowed to irrigate it from a new stream, so memele, yes, you can irrigate it from an old stream. However, by telling us that you can irrigate the Beis HaShlochin both by a new stream and by an old stream, what it's telling us is that it's to the exclusion of Beis HaBa'al, of a field in a valley, where you can irrigate it with neither a new stream nor an old stream. Friends, that was awesome. And how do we know that a Beis HaShlochin is a thirsty field, a field in a mountain where it requires our irrigation? Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, that you were all tired and weary. And the Aramaic translation is that you were mishalhe, which is like mishalche. So therefore Beis HaShlochin is a thirsty, tired field. Mishale veloe. Okay. Umay mashma dai Beis HaBa'al lishna demiasvusei. And how do we know that a Beis HaBa'al is a settled field, a field that's just chilling like a villain, a field that doesn't need any extra irrigation? Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, Kiv al Bocher Besula, that when a young fellow will be with a young fellow, female fellow. What's a female fellow? Have we gone through this before? A fella. Of course. A fella. Of course, a fellow and a fella. So when a young fellow is with a young fella, and we translate it into Aramaic, that like a young fellow will be with a young fella, your children will be with you. So we see that just like a young fellow and a young fella, they settle down. So also a field that settles down is a Beis HaBa'al. All right, fine, settle down. All right, okay, settle down. Doesn't sound like very much fun. Let's go weiter. Man tana de pseida in harvacha lo. Oh, so who is the tana that says that pseida in harvacha lo? That okay, in a what did our Mishnah say, friends? Our Mishnah says, well, you're allowed to irrigate a Beis HaShlochin. You're not allowed to irrigate a Beis HaBa'al. So, i.e., well, the Beis HaBa'al doesn't need any irrigation. So therefore, you're not allowed to add any irrigation on Chol HaMoed. Whereas a Beis HaShlochin, requires irrigation. So therefore it's a davar ha'aved. If you do not irrigate the Beis HaShlochin, it's going to get ruined. It's reliant upon you for water. So Mantana de Pseida in Avachalo, who's the Tana that says that you're only allowed to do malacha on Chol HaMoed if when you don't do that malacha, so then you're going to lose out. Va'afilu b'makom Pseida, and now taking it to the next level, even in a situation where you might lose out, where you might lose your field, Mitrach nami lo tarchinon, we don't exert ourselves more than we need to. As we said, for example, you can't take rainwater, you can't take water from a well. So we said, sure, you can irrigate a Beis HaShlochin, that's a davar ha'aved, but there are limits. So Rav Huna Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov he. So Rav Huna wants to say, you know who it is? It should be Eliezer ben Yaakov, the Tananas we learn in the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer says, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Moshchen es amayim me'ilon le'ilon. You can draw water from one tree to the next tree. If there's like water around the tree and you need to divert it to another one. Uvilvad shlo yashkes asode kula. As long as you don't irrigate the entire field. So, and that is talking about a Beis HaBaal. So we see that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's opinion is that in the context of a Beis HaBaal, a field that doesn't require extra irrigation, so he says that you're not allowed to irrigate the field. So we see that only a davar ha'aved would be allowed, but a davar harvacha, right? That would not be allowed by a Beis HaBaal, by a irrigated field, by a field in the valley. So says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, you would not be allowed to irrigate it. So that's like our Mishnah would agree with that. But fact the Gemara. So what do we see from Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov? That harvacha is not allowed. Fine. That you have this field that's a Beis HaBaal, it's in a valley, it doesn't require irrigation, and he's saying that you're not allowed to irrigate it. Okay, fine, got it. But tircha b'makom pseidim yisham eslei. But where do we see from Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov that even in a situation of makom pseida, that even in a situation of a davar ha'aved, something that would get ruined if you don't tend to it, nonetheless, tircha would not be allowed. Extra exertion, too much exertion would not be allowed. So Misham Eslei, where do we see that from? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that even by a davar ha'aved, you have to be careful not to have too much exertion. So Ela Amar Rav Papa, so rather says Rav Papa, Hamani Rabbi Yehuda. Says Rav Papa, you know what? Says Rav Papa, you know what? The author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, as we learn in the Brisa, Maya Nayotze Batchila. When you have a new stream, Mashkin Mimenu Afilus De Beis HaBaal Div Rav Meir. Rav Meir says, if you have a new stream, you can even irrigate a Beis HaBaal, a field that does not require irrigation. Says Rav Meir, big chiddush, a field that does not require irrigation, you can nonetheless irrigate it on Chol HaMoed, even with a new stream, where you have to be concerned that maybe the walls will fall in, and you'll have to do extra exertion. Still Rav Meir says it's okay. Rav Yehuda Omer says Rav Yehuda, Ein mashkin elas de beis hashlochin shechareva. Rav Yehuda says that you can only irrigate a beis hashlochin shechareva, that's desolate. We're going to have to explain what that means in a minute. But Rabbi Yehuda says basically that you can use a new stream in a beis hashlochin. Okay, just like our Mishnah said that you can use a new stream in a beis hashlochin. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer says, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, lokach velokach, you're not allowed to that you're not allowed to use either a new stream nor an old stream for your field. That when it comes to a beis hashlochin, it doesn't matter if it's a new stream, it doesn't matter if it's an old stream, you would not be allowed to irrigate your field. Okay, fine. Yosser Akenom Rabbi Yehuda, and more so says Rabbi Yehuda, Lo Yifane Adam Amas Hamayim V'Yashkel Ginoso L'Chuvaso. A fellow should not clear out a irrigation canal and provide irrigation to his field or to his churva, as we're going to explain what it is in a minute, because it would be too much exertion. Okay, fine. So what do we see so far? So what do we see so far? So we see that Rabbi Yehuda is saying that you're allowed to use a new stream in a beis hashlachin, and as long as it's not too much exertion. Okay, it sounds very familiar it sounds very similar to our Mishnah. My chareva. Now, affect the Gemara. What does it mean when Rabbi Yehuda says a beis hashlachin shechareva, a field in a hill, in a mountain that is chareva, that's destroyed? If it means that the field is mamish destroyed, so why are you irrigating a destroyed field? So clearly it's not talking about a completely destroyed field. So as Abai know, what it means is it's talking about a field that its normal irrigation stream dried up, and now we're using a new irrigation stream, and we're saying that you're even allowed to use the new irrigation stream, even though it might lead to tircha yisera, but right now it isn't, so it's okay. Fine. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, whereas Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says lokach v'lokach loshna charv ma'ayona v'loshna lo charv ma'ayona. It doesn't matter if its original source of water dried up and now we're talking about a new stream, or whether the initial stream did not dry up and we're talking about the initial stream. Mayun sheyotzo batchila lo. Right. So whether the initial stream dried up, whether the initial stream did not dry up, you would not be allowed to use a new stream. So it sounds like maybe Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is saying that you'd be allowed to use an old stream, but you're not allowed to use a new stream. So Reb Meir says you can even use a new stream by a beis habal, by a field that doesn't actually require irrigation. Reb Meir says you can even use a new stream over there. Reb Yehuda says no, you can use a new stream only by a beis hashlachin, or a field that requires water. But and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says no, you're not allowed to use a new stream even by a field that requires water. Okay. Now umimai. Now the Gemara says, okay, but still, how can we be so convinced that our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda? We wanted to say that, well, because Rabbi Yehuda seems to be saying, Rabbi Yehuda is saying that you can use a new stream in a beis hashlachin, and you're not allowed to do tircha yisera. That's exactly what our Mishnah said. You can use a new stream in a beis hashlachin and don't do tircha yisera. But in fact, the Gemara, but it's not the whole picture. But maybe when Rabbi Yehuda is saying that you're allowed to irrigate a beis hashlachin but not a beis habal, maybe that's only by a new stream, because we have to be concerned that maybe the walls are going to cave in and it's going to lead to extra exertion, and that is why you're not allowed to use a new stream by a beis habal. But if we're talking about an old established stream, where it's not going to fall, maybe Rabbi Yehuda would say that there you're allowed to, right, even by a beis habal, that would be acceptable. Meaning all Rabbi Yehuda is talking about in this brisa is a new stream. By a new stream, he says that you're allowed to use a new stream by a beis hashlachin. But what about an old stream? The Mishnah, the brisa isn't talking about an old stream. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda would say that when it comes to an old stream, you'd be allowed to use it even by a beis habal, because there's no concern about extra exertion since the stream is already established. So says the Gemara, but imke masnisan aman tirami. But if that's the case, then who's the author of our Mishnah? So rather the Rabbi Yehuda, when it comes to Rabbi Yehuda, loshna mayan sheyotzo batchila, loshna mayan shelo yotzo batchila. No, so rather what we'll say is that Rabbi Yehuda is not only limited to a new, to his opinion regarding a new stream, but rather also when it comes to an old stream, he would say the same thing. Beis hashlachin in beis habal, that you can use the stream by a beis hashlachin, but not by a beis habal, by a field that requires irrigation, not by a field that does not require irrigation. So then why does it only say in the brisa a new stream? To teach you the strength of Reb Meir's opinion, that even by a new stream, mashkin mimenu afilu stay habal, you can even use a new stream where you have to be concerned that the caves, that the walls can fall in, and it might lead to extra exertion. Still, you can use that even by a beis habal, a field that does not require irrigation. You could still use even a new stream. So to teach how much of a chiddush Reb Meir is making. But Rabbi Yehuda would say that both by a new stream and by an old stream, you can use it by a beis hashlochim, but not by a beis habal. And even by a beis hashlochim, you can't do too much exertion. So the author of our Mishnah, friends, is Rabbi Yehuda. All right, friends, moving on. Itmar, it was stated, friends, this is like Gemara. This is like Gemara, huh? Reminds you of old times, right? Yeah, it's been like a while since we had like sugyas, Shtickle sugya over here. Itmar, it was stated, Hamanachish v'amashke mayim lezroyim be-Shabbos mishum mayim asvinan bei. Alright? Friends, that's what the Gemara wants to know. A friend who weeds on Shabbos. Okay? V'amashke mayim lezroyim, or he irrigates, he gives water to seeds on Shabbos. What do you warn him for? Okay, you have a guy weeding, or he's pouring water onto seeds. What do you warn him for? Rabba says, you warn him, hey man, if you keep doing that, you're gonna get stoned. If you keep weeding, you're gonna get stoned. Interesting. Because of choresh, because you're plowing. Whereas Rav Yosef says, Mishum Zoreh. He says if you keep weeding, you're going to get stoned because of seeding. Alright, what do you want me to tell you? Okay, so you have a guy who's weeding, or he's watering some seeds. So Rabbah says the issue is that of plowing. Rav Yosef says the issue is that of seeding. Rabbah says, Rabbah Kavosi Didi Mistav. And Rabbah says it makes more sense, like I'm saying, that you have to be concerned about plowing. Because how come you plow? You plow to soften earth. And this fellow also is softening the earth. Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef, it makes more sense like me, that the issue is going to be seeding, planting. Just like the way of somebody who plants a seed is to grow fruit, so here as well, when you have a fellow who is what's he doing? He's weeding or he's watering a seed. It is in order to ultimately grow the thing, right? When you're weeding, I don't know much about weeding, but I guess you remove some, like you uproot like grass or something from the ground in order to make other things like grow better. So therefore here also is to make to grow fruit. So okay, Rabbah says that the issue here is one of plowing. Rav Yosef says the issue is like planting. All right. Amle Abai le Rabbah. It says Abai to Rabbah. The Didach Kasha to Rav Yosef Kasha. He says, look, I have a question, but both on you and Rav Yosef. The Didach Kasha, according to you, Rabbah, that you say that it's about plowing. Mishum Choresh in, Mishum Zoreh lo. What? It's only an issue of plowing. It's not an issue of planting. The Rav Yosef Kasha, Mishum Zoreh in, Mishum Choresh lo. And I'll ask the same question, but in reverse for Rav Yosef. What? The only issue is planting, but not because of plowing. And if you're going to say, yeah, inachinami, but whenever you have two punishments, you can only get one, right? You can only warn because of one of them. But V'omer of Kahana, but doesn't Rav Kahana say Zomer v'tzarich le'etzim, that if you have a fellow who is pruning and he needs the wood that he's pruning, right? So there's a tree and he needs to remove some of the branches in order to help the other ones grow better. Chayiv Shtayim, if he needs the wood that he's removing, so then he's chayiv for two things. Achas mishum noteah, v'achas mishum kotzer. One for planting, right? That you're making the tree grow better. And the other one for kotzer, for harvesting, because you're harvesting the wood because you need the wood. So we see that it is possible to be violating two malachas. And if that's the case, then Rabbah and Rav Yosef, why can't he be chayiv for both if he's weeding or if he's watering a seed? Can't he be chayiv both for chorish and for zorea? Kasha. And the Gemara says it's taka aguta kasha. Eisvei Rav Yosef l'Rabba, Rav Yosef asakasha to Rabba. Friends, don't you want to know what that question is? Hamenachesh v'mechape b'kilayim. Remember, what does Rav Yosef say? Rav Yosef says that the issue with weeding and watering a seed is zorea, is that it's going to, it's planting, it's growing. Whereas Rabba said it's chorish, harvesting. So now Rav Yosef, who says planting, asks the kasha and Rabba, who says harvesting, and the kasha is the following: Hamenachesh, a fellow who is weeding, v'mechape b'kilayim, or somebody who covers a seed, and we're talking about kilayim, mixtures, right, forbidden mixtures. For example, wheat and grapes. You're growing them together, that's not allowed. So somebody who weeds or somebody who covers a seed, loke, hitake gets malchus. Hitake gets malchus, lashes. Rabbi Akiva, right, on if it's kilayim. Rabbi Akiva almost says, Rabbi Akiva afa makayim, even somebody who keeps the plants there, right? He sees the plants and he leaves them there, even though he should get rid of it. He gets malchus oichet. So Bishlam Ledidi, so now says Rav Yosef to Rabba, I understand according to me, Daminu Mishum Zoreya, that I say that the issue with weeding is that it's planting. So Hainu de Asira Zriya B'Kilayim. So I understand then why if a fellow weeds by Kilayim, so then he's going to be chayiv to get whipped, because weeding is like planting, and planting is not allowed by Kilayim. So El Ledidach, but according to you, Rabba, that it's about choresh, plowing. Domat mishum choresh charisha b'kilayim yasira, is plowing by kilayim a problem? So Omalei, so Rabba says, well, mishum mekayim. No, the reason why he's getting whipped when he weeds is not because of weeding, because weeding the thing is plowing, and plowing would be okay by kilayim. The issue is that he's leaving the kilayim intact, and that's not allowed. But 1 second, the Brisa, if we continue in the Brisa, it says Rabbi Akiva says that you get whipped even if you leave the kilayim intact. But Michlal de Tanakama lav mishum mekayimhu, which implies then that Rabbi Akiva is saying that you get whipped if you leave the kilayim intact, but the Tanakama, who says weeding and covering the seed, you get whipped, he's not talking about Mekayim. That's Rabbi Akiva, who comes later. So, and for the Gemara, Kula Rabbi Akiva, actually the entire Brisa is all Rabbi Akiva. My tam ka'amar. And you have to read the Brisa as sort of an explanatory Brisa that kind of opens up as it goes. Meaning, my tam amanachish v'amechap b'kilayim loke. How come if a fellow weeds or covers a seed by kilayim, he gets whipped? Mishum mekayim, because he's leaving it, he's being mekayim it, he's leaving it around, he's not destroying it. Rabbi Akiva Omer, because Rabbi Akiva says, afa mekayim, that even somebody who leaves the kilayim around gets whipped. Alright, so Rabbi could say that the issue with menachesh is mekayim, it's not because of zareah. Fine. My time with Rabbi Akiva, Akam Rabbi Akiva says you're not allowed to leave kilayim around. The time is the pasuk says, Sod cholo sizur kilayim, do not plant your field kilayim. Any other zoreah, all I know is planting. Mikayim minayin. How do I know that you can't even leave it sort of intact? You have to destroy it. Tamalomer kilayim sod cholo. If you take a look at the pasuk says, Es chukosa tishmoru, guard my statutes. Ben cholo sabia kilayim sod cholo sizur kilayim. Don't have mixtures in animals, don't have mixtures in your field, but you could break it up. If you put the comma differently, it says ben cholo sabia kilayim. Kilayim sod cholo. Right? You could, depending on where you put the comma in the pasuk, you could read it kilayim sod cholo. That kilu, you shouldn't even have bichlal kilayim in your field. You can't even leave it intact. Okay, fine. Sounds very nice. Tanan. We learned in our Mishnah, Mashkin beis hashlochin b'moyed. You are allowed to irrigate a beis hashlochin during the chol hamoed. Right? If you have a field that requires water, you're allowed to irrigate it on chol hamoed, uva shvis, as well as on shmita. So b'shlam hamoed, mishum tirchu, u'makum pseid shor rabban. So I understand why you'd be allowed to irrigate the Beis HaShlochin on Chol HaMoed, because what's the reason why you wouldn't be allowed to? Because of the tircha, because it's too much exertion. But when it comes to Beis HaShlochin, where the field can get ruined if you don't irrigate it, so they say, it's okay, you're allowed to exert yourself to irrigate the field, because otherwise it would get destroyed. But on Shemitah, why are you allowed to irrigate this field on Shemitah? Whether we're saying that irrigating is an issue of Zoreah, right? Because we had the Machlokas, Rabba and Rav Yosef earlier, right? About irrigating. Is irrigating an issue of Chorish, right? Do you warn the fellow on Shabbos because of Chorish, or do you warn him because of Zoreah? But either way, Zriya v'charisha b'shviyas mishari. Are you allowed to seed? Are you allowed to plow on Shviyas? Surely not. So therefore, why are you allowed to irrigate your field on Shemitah? Abaye says, Abaye b'shviyas b'zman hazeh. Well, it's talking about Shemitah nowadays. V'Rebbe, and it's the opinion of Rebbe, the Tanya, as we learn in the Brayso, Rabbi Omer says, Rebbe, v'zed dvar Shemitah shamot. That this is the matter of Shemitah, you have to rest. B'shtei Shmitos HaKosim v'daber, it's talking about two Shmitas, right? Ha-Shmitah shamot, it says Shemitah twice. So it's talking about two Shmitas. Acha Shmitas karka, v'acha Shmitas ksofim. Both that you have to let the land rest, but also that money rests. That if you had a loan, loans are forgiven. So Bizman Shata Mishamit Karka Ata Mishamit Ksofim, and says Rebbe, whenever you have to have Shemitah on the land, so you also have Shemitah of the money. And if there's no Shemitah of the land, so then there's no Shemitah of the money either. And therefore, and the loans aren't forgiven. And therefore, we see that according to Rebbe, there is a time that there is no Shemitah. When is there no Shemitah? Bizman Hazeh, when there's no Beis HaMikdash. So therefore we see that according to Rebbe, Shemitah nowadays is Midei Rabbanon. Because Shemitah nowadays is Midei Rabbanon, so then you would be allowed to irrigate your field if it's a b'makom hefsed, if the field otherwise would get ruined, you'd be allowed to irrigate your field on Shemitah nowadays, because according to Rebbe, it is only Midei Rabbanon. Friends, that was the first daf of Masechta Moed Ka'in. Friends, what did you think? It's a very interesting daf, right? We talked about, right, some of the things that we talked about is Davar Aved, right? We learned the distinction between a Beis HaShlochin and a Beis HaBaal. A Beis HaShlochin being a field that requires our assistance in our irrigation, and if we do not irrigate it, it will get ruined. That's what's called a Davar Aved, something that can get ruined. Versus the Beis HaBaal, which is a field in a valley that does not require rain water, because it sort of gets all the runoff from the mountains and has plenty of water. We saw a three-way machlokas between Reb Meir, Reb Yehuda, and Reb Elazar ben Azariah about how we relate to these fields. According to Reb Meir, he has sort of the most extreme in the lenient sense position, which is that even a new stream, that now by a new stream there's a risk that maybe the walls will cave in and then it will be extra exertion to fix it. So we might think to be more stringent, but says Reb Meir, no, you can even use a new stream to irrigate a Beis HaBaal, a field that does not require irrigation. You could still irrigate it with a new stream. Reb Yehuda's opinion is that you can only use a new stream by a Beis HaShlochin, by a field that does not require irrigation. A field that does require irrigation, so you can use a new stream. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says you can't use a new stream whatsoever, not by a Beis HaShlochin, not by a Beis HaBaal, not at all. And Rabbi Yehuda would say when it comes to an old stream, you can use that only by a Beis HaBaal as well, by a Beis HaShlochin as well, but by a Beis HaBaal you would not be allowed to use any stream whatsoever, not a new stream, not in old stream. We then got to an interesting machlokas between Rabba and Rav Yosef about when it comes to weeding and when it comes to watering a seed. What do you warn a fellow for on Shabbos? Rabba says you warn him for plowing. Rav Yosef says that you warn him for planting. And we then ask, based on that if we're saying that watering a seed is, according to Rabbah, plowing, according to Rav Yosef, planting, then how could our Mishnah say that you're allowed to irrigate a field on Shemitah if both plowing and planting are things that you're not allowed to do on Shemitah? To which Abaye answers, well, we could say that our Mishnah is the opinion of Rebbe, and it's talking about Shemitah Bizman Hazeh, that it's only Midirabanan, and when it comes to extra exertion, so it would, and when it comes to meaning the reason why nowadays you wouldn't be allowed to do these things would be for exertion, and if we're in a situation, the reason why you wouldn't be allowed to do it on Shemitah would be because you're plowing or you're seeding. However, in a situation where the field would get ruined because it's a Beis HaShlochin, so the rabbi said that you would be allowed to do it Bizman Hazeh. Friends, that is Daf Beis of Masechet Moed Katan. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.